All right, today we're going to jump in a time machine and travel back thousands of years. We're going to meet the very first great civilization of Mesoamerica, the Olmecs. Let's get into it. But before we really dig in, I want to start with a big question, one that kind of flips history on its head. What if the new world we all learned about in school was never actually new? And this right here, this is the whole point. That phrase, New World, well, that's a purely European point of view. For the millions of people who had been building cities and empires there for thousands of years, it was just home. It just goes to show you, history really depends on who's telling the story. So to really get a handle on the Olmecs, we first need to be clear on what we even mean by the word civilization. It's a word we hear all the time, but what's it actually made of? So what makes a civilization, well, a civilization? It's basically a society that's hit a certain level of complexity. Think of it like a checklist. You need cities, a government running the show, different social classes, some way of keeping records, a culture that everyone shares, and some seriously advanced knowledge. Keep that checklist in mind, because we're going to use it to understand the Olmecs. Okay, so with that framework, let's meet the stars of our show, the Olmecs. These were the earliest known major civilization in Mesoamerica, which is that whole region from modern-day Mexico down into Central America. They were the originals. And wow, just look at this timeline. It really puts things into perspective. The Olmecs were doing their thing way back around 1500 BCE. That's a full 1,000 years before the Maya hit their famous classic period, and almost 3,000 years before the Aztecs even showed up. They were the trailblazers. You know, we always hear about the Maya, the Aztecs, and the Inca, but it was the Olmecs who really laid the groundwork for all of them. That's why they've earned this incredible title, the Mother Culture, known for those absolutely stunning giant stone heads. And here's where things get really fascinating, and honestly a bit mysterious. We call the Olmecs an archaeological culture. Why? Because they didn't leave behind any written histories that we can actually read. So everything we know, every single detail, has been figured out by archaeologists acting like detectives, piecing together the story from silent objects they left in the ground. And get this, even the name Olmec isn't what they called themselves. We have no idea what they called themselves. Olmec is actually a word from the Aztec language, used centuries later. It just means rubber people because of where their artifacts were found. It's a huge reminder of just how much of their real story is lost. So how did they do it? How did this mysterious group of people build something so lasting, a culture that would influence so many others? Well, the clues are literally carved in stone. I mean, these folks weren't just getting by, they were thriving. They were master farmers growing that super important crop, maize or corn, but they were also brilliant city planners and engineers, building complex aqueducts to manage water. And yeah, they even played a game with rubber balls that would become a sacred tradition for centuries. You can see their genius in their city, La Venta. This place was a masterpiece of planning. You don't just accidentally build massive public plazas, giant earthen pyramids, and intricate tombs. That takes a strong government, a ton of organization, and a real sense of shared purpose. And then there's the art. Oh man, the art. Of course, you've probably seen the colossal stone heads, some weighing over 20 tons, but they also made these beautiful, delicate sculptures out of precious jade. They worshipped powerful gods, like this half-human, half-jaguar figure you see everywhere. And incredibly, they even had their own writing and number system, a system that to this day we still can't read. Imagine the secrets locked away in there. So all of this, the cities, the art, the engineering, it all builds up to their biggest title, the mother culture of Mesoamerica. So what does that actually mean? Think of it this way. A mother culture is like the band that inspires all the other bands you love. They set the style, they wrote the first hits, and their influence pops up in everyone else's music. They basically created the blueprint for everyone who came after. And the proof is everywhere. It's like finding their fingerprints all over later civilizations. The Olmecs built the first pyramids, they worshipped the jaguar, they played those ritual ball games. And guess what? You see all of those exact things, just evolved a bit, in Maya and Aztec culture. The Olmecs were the original trendsetters. But here's the kicker, the absolute smoking gun. We have found actual Olmec artifacts, ancient heirlooms, buried in the tombs of Maya kings and inside the most sacred temple of the Aztec capital. This proves that these later, powerful empires knew exactly who the Olmecs were, and they treasured their history. Okay, so this is all amazing ancient history, but let's bring it into the present. How does this ancient cultural DNA, this Olmec legacy, still show up today? Well, take the country of Mexico. The name itself comes from the Mexica. That's what the Aztecs called themselves. And that famous eagle on a cactus at the center of the Mexican flag, that's pure Aztec legend, the story of how they founded their capital. And remember, the Aztecs were standing on a foundation built centuries earlier by the Olmecs. So at the end of the day, why does this all matter? Because understanding the Olmecs completely changes how we see the history of the Americas. This wasn't some empty land waiting to be discovered. It was a world with its own deep, ancient, and incredibly rich history long before any Europeans arrived. It's just incredible to think that this whole amazing story, this entire civilization, was pieced together from silent stones and clues buried in the dirt. It really makes you wonder, right? What other huge chapters of human history, what other mother cultures are still out there, just waiting for us to find them?